At my son's funeral, his wife threw me out of my own ranch. I'm Norman Phillips, and what happened next changed everything. Picture this, your child just died. You're grieving under the scorching Arizona sun, and your daughter-in-law looks you in the eye and says, "Stop crying, pack your bags, and get out of my ranch now." She called me a worthless old burden in front of everyone at my son's funeral. But here's what Gloria didn't know. The ranch she was kicking me out of? I built it in 1995. The money she thought she inherited? $685,000, that was always mine. For 3 years, she lived off my generosity while treating me like charity. Instead of arguing, I just walked away into the desert heat. Sometimes silence is the most powerful response of all. If you're new here, hit subscribe. I share stories about standing up to disrespect. And trust me, you'll want to see how this ends, because what Gloria discovered 4 days later taught both of us that assumptions can cost you everything. Let me start from the beginning. The signs were there from day one. I just chose to ignore them, like tumbleweeds rolling past my front gate. When my son Eugene died in that hiking accident 2 months ago in Sedona's Red Rocks, Gloria immediately took charge. "Don't worry about the arrangements, Norman," she said, her voice cutting through the desert air like a rattlesnake's warning. "I'll handle everything." What she really meant was, stay out of my way. At the funeral home in Phoenix, she made every decision while I sat there sweating in my best Western shirt. The casket, the flowers, even the music. When I suggested Eugene's favorite song, "Take Me Home, Country Roads," the one we used to play when we worked on the ranch together, she cut me off faster than a flash flood in a wash. "That's too depressing, Norman," Gloria said, adjusting her designer sunglasses. "We need something more uplifting for my social media coverage." Social media coverage. At my son's funeral. Under the blazing Arizona sun. I watched her command the room in her $500 black dress, directing everyone like she was producing some reality show about desert tragedy. And me? I sat in my old Wranglers and boots, the same ones I'd worn to Helen's funeral 2 years earlier, feeling as invisible as a ghost town. The second sign came during the reception at our ranch. My ranch, technically, though Gloria had been treating it like hers since Eugene's death. She pulled me aside by the horse stables, where Thunder and my 2 mares stood pawing the sandy ground in the heat. "Norman, we need to talk about your situation." My situation. The temperature was pushing 110 degrees, but her words felt colder than a January morning in Flagstaff. "You're financially dependent on us now. Eugene was supporting you, and with him gone," she shrugged like she was discussing the weather forecast. "I can't carry that burden." Burden. That word hit harder than a kick from Thunder himself. "I've been more than generous letting you stay here," she continued, gesturing toward the ranch house I'd built with my own hands. "But this ranch is mine now. Everything is mine. Eugene left it all to me." I nodded slowly, watching a roadrunner dart across the sandy yard. Gloria saw that nod as defeat. What she didn't see was calculation. She had no idea that Eugene had never owned this ranch. He lived here, yes, grew up chasing lizards and learning to ride here, absolutely, but owned it? Never. She also didn't know about the filing cabinet in my workshop basement, buried under 29 years of Arizona dust. 4 decades of meticulously organized financial records. The aerospace engineer in me never threw anything away. Most importantly, she didn't know about my investment portfolio, the fruits of 30 years at Boeing, carefully tended like desert plants that know how to survive. But I'm getting ahead of myself, like a dust devil spinning toward nowhere. The funeral guests saw what Gloria wanted them to see. A successful social media manager taking charge during a family crisis, and an old cowboy who couldn't handle his own affairs. They watched her shake hands and accept condolences like she was the new sheriff in town. Meanwhile, I sat quietly in Eugene's old leather chair, the one I'd bought him for his 21st birthday, and listened to her paint me as the dependent father-in-law. "Norman's having a hard time adjusting," I heard her tell our neighbor Arthur Davis, who ran cattle on the spread next to mine. "The poor man doesn't understand modern finances. Eugene handled everything for him." Arthur shot me a sympathetic look. He'd known me for 24 years, since the day I broke ground on this lot and started hauling water in 5-gallon jugs because the well wasn't dug yet. But even he seemed to believe Gloria's version of reality. That's when I realized something important as the desert sunset painted everything orange. People see what they expect to see. Gloria expected to see a grieving widower who couldn't manage on his own, so that's what she saw. The old Ford F-150 I drove instead of something flashy, the simple clothes I wore instead of expensive designer gear, the quiet way I handled my grief instead of posting about it online. She mistook humility for helplessness, quiet for weak, generous for desperate. It was an understandable mistake, I suppose. I'd spent 2 years since Helen's death living simply in this desert paradise we'd built together. No need for expensive toys or status symbols when you're learning to live alone under the endless Arizona sky. Eugene understood that. He respected my choice to downsize my lifestyle after Helen passed. Helen used to joke that I was building our own little piece of heaven in this desert, with the saguaro cacti standing guard like ancient sentinels and the mountains framing our view like God's own picture window. But Gloria measured worth by appearance, by volume, by Instagram followers. She was about to learn that the most dangerous person in any room is the one who doesn't need to prove anything at all, especially when that room sits on 150 acres of prime Scottsdale real estate. As the last guests left that Tuesday evening, their headlights disappearing down our gravel drive like fireflies, Gloria cornered me by the front gate where our ranch sign read Phillips Ranch, Est 1995. I meant what I said, Norman. This arrangement isn't working anymore. I looked around the property I'd designed 29 years ago, the stables I'd built by hand, learning carpentry from YouTube videos and old-timers at the hardware store, the workshop where Eugene and I had restored his first truck, a beat-up Chevy that ran like a dream by the time we finished. The fence line I'd measured and set with him when he was 12, teaching him that good fences make good neighbors and better men. I understand, I said quietly, watching the last light fade behind Camelback Mountain. But Gloria had no idea what I understood, and she definitely had no idea what was coming next. Wednesday morning brought clarity and coffee in equal measure. I sat at my kitchen table, the one Helen and I had bought at a yard sale in Tempe back in 1994, and made a list. Not of what I was losing, but of what Gloria thought she was gaining. The ranch, 150 acres of prime Scottsdale real estate with mountain views that real estate agents called priceless. Current market value, according to Gloria's own research, $450,000. The life insurance, Eugene's policy through Honeywell, where he'd worked as a systems engineer, $135,000. Gloria had already started spending that money in her head, probably planning some Los Angeles adventure. The investments, everything from my Boeing 401k to my private portfolio, carefully built over 34 years of desert living. Not valuable to others maybe, but worth $685,000 to me. More than enough to live comfortably until the saguaros stopped blooming. But here's what really bothered me as I watched the sun rise over the Superstition Mountains. It wasn't the money or even the ranch. It was the erasure. Gloria was systematically removing every trace of the life Helen and I had built here under this endless desert sky. She'd already boxed up Helen's photos from the mantle, pictures of us at the Grand Canyon, at Sedona, at our wedding in a little chapel in Old Town Scottsdale. Eugene's childhood drawings were gone from the refrigerator, including the crayon masterpiece of our ranch he'd made when he was 8. Even my old Boeing engineering certificates had disappeared from the den wall. "I'm redecorating," she explained when I asked about Helen's photos, her voice as cold as a January morning in Flagstaff. Eugene always said this place needed updating. Updating. As if 30 years of memories were outdated software that needed deleting. She gave me 30 days. 30 days to find somewhere else to live on what she assumed was Social Security and nothing else. 30 days to pack up 3 decades of desert living and pretend it never happened. The cruelest part, she was doing it all with such confidence, such certainty, that she held all the cards, like she was playing poker with marked deck. Tuesday afternoon, she'd handed me a printed timeline, actually printed it out on her fancy laser printer like I was a tenant getting evicted from a downtown apartment. November 15th, she said, pointing to the date circled in red marker. That gives you time to find a nice senior community somewhere more appropriate for your situation. Your situation. There was that phrase again, spoken like I was some kind of charity case instead of the man who'd turned this piece of raw desert into a working ranch. "I've already looked into a few places," she continued, pulling out brochures like she was doing me some kind of favor. "Desert Sunset Manor has openings. It's only $2,000 a month for a studio apartment with shared bathroom facilities. $2,000 a month. She expected me to spend my entire Social Security check on rent and somehow survive on nothing else under the Arizona sun. "What about food?" I asked. "Transportation, medical bills, feed for the horses?" She shrugged like she was discussing the weather. "There are programs for people in your situation. Food stamps, Medicare. The government takes care of senior citizens, and obviously you can't keep horses in a senior community. The government. Like I was some charity case who'd never contributed anything to society, never spent 34 years designing aircraft systems, never paid into the system I'd supposedly be depending on. That's when I realized Gloria didn't just want me gone, she wanted me grateful for the opportunity to leave. She wanted me to thank her for 30 days instead of 0, to appreciate her generosity and not calling the sheriff to have me removed immediately. But Wednesday morning, sitting with my coffee and watching roadrunners chase lizards across the sandy yard, I had a different realization. Gloria had made one critical assumption, that Eugene owned everything she was claiming. She'd been married to him for 3 years. She'd lived on this ranch for 3 years, posting Instagram photos of desert sunsets and calling it her slice of paradise. She'd probably never seen a deed or a mortgage statement or any document that proved ownership of anything. Why would she? Eugene handled the day-to-day finances just like his mother and I had taught him. The man takes care of the money. Old-fashioned maybe, but it worked for us in this traditional corner of the New West. Except Eugene had never actually handled my finances. He'd helped me around the ranch, sure. Fixed machinery when I needed it. Drove me to doctor appointments after Helen died, helped with the horses when my back was acting up. But the money, the investments, the property deeds, that was always mine to manage. Gloria saw Eugene's helpfulness and assumed dependency. She saw my gratitude and assumed obligation. She saw 2 years of quiet grief and assumed defeat. If I said nothing, if I just packed my bags and shuffled off to desert, Sunset Manor, like a good little senior citizen, what message would that send? That bullies win in the desert just like everywhere else. That volume beats truth even under the endless Arizona sky. That if you're loud enough and confident enough, you can rewrite history and steal someone's life. The stakes weren't just financial. They were about everything Helen and I had built together in this harsh, beautiful landscape. But I had something Gloria didn't know about, something that would change everything. I just needed to find the right moment to use it, like waiting for the perfect moment to break a wild Mustang. Thursday morning, Gloria let herself into my ranch with Eugene's key. I was having breakfast when I heard the front door open. No knock, no good morning, just the sound of someone walking into my home like they owned it. She walked in like she was inspecting her new property, which in her mind, she was. "Norman, we need to talk," she announced, marching into the kitchen with her laptop under her arm and her designer sunglasses pushed up on her head. "About what?" "Your finances." She sat down across from me without being invited, opening her laptop like she was conducting a business meeting. "I've been researching your situation, and I need to understand exactly what Eugene was covering for you." I took a sip of coffee, watching a roadrunner dart past the kitchen window. "Such as?" "The property taxes, the utilities, the insurance." She pulled up a spreadsheet that looked like something a financial advisor might use. "Eugene never told me the exact amounts, but I need to know so I can budget properly." "Budget for what?" "For taking over those payments, obviously." She looked at me like I was having trouble understanding basic English. "Until you move out, I'll have to cover everything Eugene was covering for you." I set down my coffee cup carefully. "And what exactly do you think Eugene was covering?" "Everything. The mortgage, the taxes, the electric bill. You're on a fixed income, Norman. Social Security doesn't stretch that far in Scottsdale. Is that what Eugene told you?" Gloria's typing stopped. Her manicured fingers froze over the keyboard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, did Eugene specifically tell you he was paying my bills?" "He didn't have to tell me. It's obvious." She gestured around the kitchen with its granite countertops and custom cabinets. "How else could you afford to live here? This ranch is worth over $450,000. And how do you know what it's worth?" "I researched property values in this area. I'm not stupid, Norman. I know what prime Scottsdale real estate costs, but you've never seen the deed." The question hung in the air like heat shimmer rising from desert pavement. Gloria's confident expression flickered for just a moment, like a candle in a dust storm. I don't need to see the deed. Eugene inherited this ranch when your wife died. Did he? Of course he did. Who else would get it? I stood up slowly and walked to the sink, rinsing my coffee cup with deliberate care while I watched Thunder and the mares moving lazily in the morning heat. You know, Gloria, you've made a lot of assumptions about my finances. They're not assumptions, they're facts. Really? What other facts do you have? She consulted her spreadsheet. Eugene told me you never contributed a dime to this ranch, that he was basically supporting a dependent. I turned around. Is that what Eugene told you? Yes. Interesting. Because I bought this land in 1995, paid cash for 150 acres of raw desert, hired the contractors, supervised every day of construction in 115-degree heat. Gloria's face tightened. That was 29 years ago. Things change. Some things. Not ownership. Look, Norman, I know this is hard for you, losing Eugene, having to face reality about your financial situation. But denial won't help. What denial? Pretending you're not dependent on family charity. The word charity landed like a slap across the face. I dried my hands on the dish towel, taking my time, feeling the weight of 29 years of desert living, of building something from nothing under the unforgiving Arizona sun. Gloria, let me ask you something. What? In 3 years of marriage, did Eugene ever show you a mortgage statement? We kept our finances separate. Did he ever mention making house payments? We didn't discuss every detail of his expenses. Did you ever see him write a check for property taxes? $8,400 a year to Maricopa County? Her silence was answer enough. Here's what I think happened, I said, leaning against the counter. Eugene helped me around the ranch, fixed some machinery, did some maintenance work, and you assumed that meant he was supporting me financially, because that's what it looked like. Appearances can be deceiving in the desert. Mirages make you see things that aren't there. Gloria stood up, clearly frustrated. Fine. Show me the deed. Prove you own this ranch. I don't have to prove anything to you. Yes, you do, because I'm Eugene's widow and I inherited everything. Did you? Stop answering questions with questions. Stop making assumptions. We stared at each other across the kitchen. Gloria's social media composure was cracking like dried mud in a drought. You have until November 15th, she said finally. After that, I'm changing the locks. We'll see about that. She gathered her laptop and headed for the door, her heels clicking on the tile floor like a rattlesnake's warning. We'll see about what? But I just smiled and started loading the dishwasher. Some conversations are better finished with lawyers present. Friday afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went down to my workshop basement where the desert coolness provided relief from the 108-degree heat above ground. The basement had always been my sanctuary. Helen used to joke that I was like a pack rat down there, storing away every document and receipt like they were treasures buried in the desert sand. You never know when you'll need proof of something, I'd tell her while organizing. Another filing cabinet. She'd roll her eyes and remind me that normal people didn't keep 30 years of bank statements in climate-controlled storage. But I wasn't normal people. I was an aerospace engineer who'd learned early that paper trails tell stories, and stories protect you when memories fail or people lie. The filing cabinet stood exactly where I'd left it, a monument to methodical documentation. 4 drawers of meticulous organization, each drawer labeled by decade, each file folder labeled by category, each document filed chronologically with the precision of a Boeing assembly manual. I pulled out the bottom drawer first. 1990s, the decade that changed everything. Inside, I found the folder I was looking for, real estate, 447 Cactus Ridge Road. The first document was the original land purchase agreement, March 12, 1995. Norman Phillips, buyer, $180,000 for 150 acres of raw Sonoran desert, complete with saguaro cacti, palo verde trees, and more rattlesnakes than I cared to count. The second document was the construction contract, Desert Mountain Builders, $220,000 for a custom ranch house with stables, workshop, and enough space for a man to live free under the endless Arizona sky. The third document was the most important, the original deed, recorded March 15, 1995. Owner, Norman Phillips. No co-signer, no joint ownership, no mortgage. I'd paid cash for everything, using my Boeing savings and Helen's inheritance from her father's small farm back in Kansas. Gloria had no idea, of course. She'd been 1 year old in 1995, probably learning to walk while I was learning to navigate Arizona building permits and desert construction challenges. But there was more in that folder, much more. Insurance policies, property tax receipts, utility connection agreements, all in my name, all paid by me, all proving continuous ownership for 29 years in this harsh, beautiful desert. Eugene's name appeared nowhere in any of these documents. I pulled out the second drawer. 2000s, more of the same. Property taxes paid annually by Norman Phillips to Maricopa County, insurance premiums paid quarterly by Norman Phillips. Even the fence repair receipts after that flash flood in 2008 were in my name. The 2010s drawer told the same story, and the most recent file from 2024. But the real surprise was in the very back of the bottom drawer, in a folder labeled Investment Portfolio, Boeing Retirement. This was the folder Gloria definitely didn't know about. Inside were papers that would change everything, documents that told a story she couldn't even imagine in her worst nightmares. The first paper was my Boeing 401k statement. Balance as of October 31st, 2024, $485,000. 34 years of contributions, employer matching, and compound interest growing like desert wildflowers after a rare rain. The second paper was my Fidelity investment account. Balance, $200,000. Conservative investments, blue-chip stocks, the kind of portfolio that survives market downturns like saguaro cacti survive drought. The third paper was a list of beneficiaries. Eugene's name was there, yes, but not as an owner. As a beneficiary during his lifetime, with specific terms and conditions that Gloria had never bothered to ask about. The investment portfolio was straightforward as desert geology. 34 years of contributing to my Boeing 401k, plus careful investments in mutual funds and dividend stocks. Eugene received monthly allowances for education, his wedding, and general support when needed. But ownership? That always remained with me, secure as bedrock under shifting sand. Eugene had lived comfortably because I made sure he lived comfortably. The engineering degree I helped pay for at Arizona State, the truck I helped him buy, the wedding I helped fund right here on the ranch. All of it flowed from this portfolio. All of it remained under my control. Gloria saw Eugene's comfortable lifestyle and assumed he was independently wealthy. She saw his generosity toward me and assumed it came from his own earnings. She never imagined that the money flowing from Eugene to me was actually my own money flowing back home, like water finding its way back to the desert after winter snow melts in the mountains. But there was one more document in that folder, one that would matter most when the time came for truth-telling. Eugene's life insurance policy. $135,000, just like Gloria said. But the beneficiary wasn't Gloria. The beneficiary was Norman Phillips. Gloria had been spending money that was never hers to begin with, making plans with resources that belonged to someone else, building a future on a foundation that didn't exist. I closed the filing cabinet and headed back upstairs into the blazing afternoon heat. In the kitchen, I made myself a sandwich and thought about timing while thunder whinnied softly in the distance. Monday morning, I sat in attorney Frances Martinez's office in downtown Scottsdale with 3 manila folders on her mahogany desk. Outside, palm trees swayed in the dry wind and the temperature was already pushing 95 degrees at 9 a.m. Frances had been handling my legal affairs for 15 years. She knew exactly what those folders contained. "Norman," she said, adjusting her reading glasses, "I have to ask one more time. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" "I'm sure. Because once we walk into that office, there's no taking it back. Gloria will know everything, and so will her colleagues." "Good. It's time for the truth to come out from under the desert rocks." Frances opened the first folder. "Let's review what we have." 20 minutes later, we walked into Social Media Solutions on Scottsdale Road. The building's air conditioning hit us like a wall of blessed relief from the morning heat. Gloria was at her desk, editing content on her computer. She looked up when we entered, and her face went from professional focus to confusion to something approaching panic. "Norman, what are you doing here? We need to talk," I said calmly, "about ownership." The confrontation that followed was swift and devastating. Frances laid out the documents like a royal flush in poker. The deed, the tax records, the investment statements, the insurance beneficiary forms. Gloria's world collapsed in real time. Her colleagues watched in stunned silence as she realized she owned nothing. Not the ranch, not the money, nothing except the truck Eugene had actually owned and his personal belongings. "Norman," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know. You didn't ask. What happens now? Now you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. The same timeline you gave me." 3 weeks later, I sat on my front porch watching the sun set behind Camelback Mountain, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and purple that no camera could capture. The horses moved peacefully in the distance, and the saguaro cacti stood like ancient guardians in the gathering dusk. My phone rang. Gloria's name appeared on the screen. "Hi, Norman." "Gloria, I wanted to call before I leave Arizona. I found a job in Los Angeles. Fresh start, new city. Good for you. I also wanted to say I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. I treated you terribly, and I understand now what Eugene always told me about you. What's that? That quiet strength runs deeper than loud words. That respect is earned, not inherited. That assumptions can cost you everything. Those are good lessons to learn. I wish I'd learned them sooner." After she hung up, I sat in the desert silence, listening to the coyotes begin their evening song. Gloria had learned an expensive lesson about respect and assumptions, but I'd learned something too. I'd learned that quiet strength doesn't mean silent acceptance of disrespect. I'd learned that boundaries aren't walls, they're guidelines for healthy relationships. Most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell the truth and let people deal with the consequences of their own choices. Eugene would have been proud of that lesson. Helen would have approved of the dignified way I'd handled it. And me? I was at peace under the endless Arizona sky. If you've ever been underestimated because of your age, your quiet nature, or your humble lifestyle, let me know in the comments. Sometimes the best response to disrespect is simply proving them wrong. And sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones who don't need to prove anything at all. Until next time, remember, quiet doesn't mean weak. It just means selective.